Hey there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome back to another edition of Shochu'sday. On behalf of both Stephen and I, recording live here in Japan, Kanpai, good morning, it's definitely morning here. It is 10:02 as usual in the land of the rising sun, and it's been a while. How you doing, Stephen?
Good, Christopher. How are you? Uh,
I'm good.
glad the holidays are finally upon us, and I'm looking forward to a little bit of relaxation this week. Um, I I agree. We haven't done this in a while, but it was good timing that we could set this up. We're both in Japan, so we're able to do it.
Yeah, we've got, of course, Turkey on the mind at the moment, but we've got a bunch of other things to talk about as well. It was a very busy fall in Japan as far as all of the different events go. There are still things going on. It's been very exciting to see the amount of energy that has been poured in from a number of directions into the Shochu and awamori space. It's pretty dizzying to watch if you are paying attention on Instagram and the like. Um, I don't know, was there anything fun that you got up to? Anything that was happening in
Well,
Fukuoka, for instance?
well, each of the prefectures actually, it seems like coming out of COVID finally, Japan reopening late last year, there was really a focus on, all right, everything's back to normal, whether it is or not. I mean, obviously, we got a ravaging flu going, and COVID is still among us, but uh, really it seemed like we shifted from like, okay, no more public events to like, all right, makeup time. Everybody's doing big public events. And what was interesting for me is almost every prefecture that has large shochu production all had events on or around November 1st, Shochu and
Mm-hmm.
Awamori Day. And for it makes sense for them locally because then the locals can come and enjoy their local drinks. But for people like us, we want to go to all of them, right?
Yeah.
Kumamoto had something, Miyazaki had something, Kagoshima had something, and obviously we couldn't be at all three, and other communities as well.
Yeah.
So we had to pick and choose, and we chose Kagoshima, of course, as the biggest, well, at least the most distilleries, kind of the home of sweet potato shochu, and that was a lot of fun. The shochu street, as always, was great fun, and we ended up having kind of an almost impromptu group dinner after Shochu Street because it ended early. It ended at 8 p.m. because they wanted people to go out and have a nice meal afterward. We ended up
Mm-hmm.
with a really good crew, partly people who had come with us and partly who people who we ran into that were there at the same time. We ended up at dinner at a izakaya called Mikan, and that was really nostalgic for me because that's the very first izakaya I ever ate in Kagoshima City. So that's where I met. That's where my friendship with Nori Yamashita came about was
Huh.
through him coming and seeing me at that izakaya. He had recommended it, and then he stopped by after work, and yeah, so a lot of fun. How about you? You had anything interesting in Tokyo going on?
Yeah, there were lots of things going on here, but I actually didn't go out to most of the stuff. I was busy with a bunch of JSS related things and really just after traveling so much wanted to stay home. But I was trying to direct other people's attention to things that were happening all around the city, and things haven't really abated for better or worse. The sweet potato shochu distilling season has ended. It ended
Hmm.
really early for most distilleries, honestly.
Hmm.
And that's because, of course, the blight that is ongoing with particularly Kogane Sengan sweet potatoes and a couple of other varietals. But that has also meant that the season for coming to Kanto, the region where I live, the cluster of very large cities up in this part of central Japan, it's opened that up for even more chances for the public and the folks making shochu to interact in a number of creative events, and they're happening all over almost every weekend continuously. And you just I it's I I don't know how to react to it. It's almost like what the hell is going on? Yes, there's this pent up energy, but I think there's also this optimism that is coming throughout, is kind of spreading throughout the industry, spreading throughout. There's there's just more people paying attention right now. There's more people that are celebrating these indigenous spirits, and it's a sight to behold, and it's impossible to keep track of, quite honestly.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
so it's almost overwhelming. There's so much to choose from these days. So
Hmm, hmm.
um,
Similar,
yeah.
similar here. I think we get just. It seems like every weekend there's something going on, and there's some maker in here in Fukuoka. It's very easy for them to travel up from southern Kyushu, and a lot
Hmm.
of obviously Fukuoka makers are always active here. So Nishi Yoshida seems to be doing something every weekend in the city, or one of the other smaller cities around Fukuoka Prefecture. So yeah, lots of opportunity. I had a fun experience recently where a, a home distiller from the UK, maybe I shouldn't say his name since that's not quite legal, came and visited Fukuoka, and we were able to travel around and visit a distillery, and he could get some tools of the trade and learn a little bit more from people who do this professionally about how to make high quality shochu. But I tasted his stuff, and you know what? It would be hard to tell it apart from a lot of the more traditional rustic grain distillates that come out of Kyushu. Uh, I could see it in a bottle. So pretty impressive. But yeah, and then of course it's just all the other thing that's happened. I think probably for you even more in Tokyo is like friends and acquaintances just flooding the zone. Like everybody's coming to Japan. The yen is so weak, and people just want to travel, and so
Oh
we've got
yeah,
people just
it's
in and out of
been
the country constantly.
insane in a good way.
Yeah. Oh,
But
absolutely. No, it's great to see these people on our home turf. I guess a lot of times, you and I did a lot of travel in the States the last few years. So at least if we were in their cities, we often saw our friends or these industry folks on their home ground, and now they're coming over here, and we're able to show them a great time and introduce them to places that they probably wouldn't be able to find on their own, which is a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah, it's a wild times all around, and we just that was a very important tangent, I feel, but we've already sucked up like a quarter of our time. So let's move on to booze news. What you
Sure.
got? What's happening?
Well, I think we'll shift from the shochu industry to the whiskey industry.
Sure.
As I mentioned just like 30 seconds ago, the yen is really weak, and that seems to be resulting in some price hikes um, for some people's favorite products. So let me share my screen. Let's see, where is it? Go on, there it is. Okay. From our friends at, is that sharing? There we go.
Yeah.
From our friend at Nomunication, Suntory is raising prices, and I think this is a combination of factors. I think one thing, they use pretty much 100% imported grain, their mash
Mm-hmm.
bill, and so with the yen cratering, their cost of production has gone way up. I think the other thing that's happening is, look, these are popular spirits worldwide. They've got massive demand for them. They want to make the money rather than having the secondary market make the money. So it's rational from that perspective. I'll be very curious to see how this goes. But they're looking at a 20% to 125% increase in the prices of their products across their entire malt whiskey portfolio, which is huge increase. And these products were already quite pricey. Now this reflects the Japanese price and what the new price will be, but you can see Hibiki 30 in particular, Yamazaki 25, Hakuchu 25, going up 125%. Huge increases. The second oldest expressions are going up 72%, but even like the Yamazaki 12 or Hakushu 12 is going up 50%, and their non-age statements are going up over 50%. So
Hmm.
these are huge increases in the cost of these whiskeys, and I think this creates potentially an opportunity for smaller whiskey makers who are using domestic grains to potentially begin to undercut Suntory on price, which could help some of them. And we'll see. It's an interesting phenomenon. I tend not to buy these things myself because they are already expensive, and I'm curious how others will respond to this, whether or not they're going to be losing market share, or if the momentum behind these famous brands is just going to keep on rolling.
I think it depends on scarcity, yeah, but you're probably right. Um,
Hmm.
and it's 125% price hike on something that was made a long time before the cost of grain went up. So
Yeah, sure.
hey, whatever. I
Yep.
totally get it. I know that they gotta pay it forward to the new inventory that they're laying down. But
Yeah, but going up
there's
to
a,
7,000 yen for non-age stated stuff seems really, really high.
it's yeah.
You
We'll
know,
see. They have that brand recognition.
true.
I'm sure they're hoping they can ride it. But it doesn't. Yeah, it makes it a hell of a lot more expensive on the shelf overseas,
For
and
sure, for sure.
maybe they don't really care about that, and that's fine.
Mhm.
Maybe they're like, hey, people are just going to come to Japan, buy it, and mule it back anyway.
Yeah,
Hey, bless them. All right.
if they can find it. Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit. Well, I'm going to drag it back
Sure. Yeah, please do.
um, to the shochu industry, and this is something that was kind of on a lot of people's minds over the past several weeks, but not something that we certainly felt like we could talk about necessarily and let out of the bag. But then Shochu Next did that for us. So
Hmm.
it's all about Yachioden, of course.
Hmm.
And Yachioden is a really, really interesting, very passionate shochu maker in the eastern leg of Kagoshima that was offline for a long, long time. Then the father brought it back online. His sons took over and were running it. And his eldest son, Kentaro, had sort of turned it into what he refers to as a domain in terms of the fact that they were producing all of their own, believe all of their own sweet potatoes
Mm.
and a large amount of their own rice. So he was a true farmer distiller in the best sense of the traditional shochu production in Japan. But he got fired by his dad.
Hmm.
His dad just basically closed the distillery effectively because he fired. I mean, I haven't spoken to Kentaro personally, but there is this story in Shochu Next, which is an online publication about the shochu industry, and it's a very there are no particulars really. It's very vague. Kentaro was really taken aback by the whole thing, but he's not allowed to go to the distillery anymore, and I guess that means that this distillery is going bye bye forever. I don't know for
Yeah, it's shocking news. I mean, this is one of the most respected in the shochu industry, really, right?
hmm
And especially in Kagoshima, and their entire focus on domain or on growing all of their own ingredients is really uncommon. And Kentro is certainly a leader in that. So really really shocked at that turn of events. I guess we'll learn more, and as we do, we'll keep people updated. But in the meantime, in the U.S., I know that the Yachiyoda and white and black labels have been available for a while, so those aren't going to be around uh, too much longer. And then, of course, from Honkaku Spirits, you've got the Kurio and Tsurushi, which
yeah.
are these are actually some of the most exclusive products that are sold by Yachiyoden in Japan, and are now there are still bottles in the wild in the U.S. on liquor store shelves and in
Yeah, I
bars.
got
So
one right here.
if you find it, buy it, drink it. It's these are going to be unicorns. These are not going to be around much longer. Uh, so dead distilleries are good for the secondary market, but bad for the people who are working at them. Uh, our good friend Pablo, I don't know if he did the same for you, but he went and visited Tarumizu where Yachiyoden is, and I got a little care package in the mail of this year's vintage of Kurio and Zerushi, which was quite nice of him. So thank you, Pablo.
Yeah. If you guys don't want to pony up for whatever you find on the shelf in the States, please DM us and we will go buy it and bring it back to Japan. That's what I'm going to be doing every time I find one of those bottles. There are very few of them left, but where they
Sure, sure.
exist, I will be purchasing them. Yeah, it really is. It's the last whispers of an amazing endeavor that
Hmm. Hmm.
unfortunately, for reasons that are beyond pretty much everyone in the industry, the whole thing was shut down. So, Anyway, let's move on to happier things here. That is quite depressing, honestly. Moving on from booze news to the main event, which of course is Thursday in the United States, if you partake, is of course Turkey Day. And we are stoked. Stephen and I are prepping for our own festivities on various ends of the archipelago. But we wanted to just have a discussion about flavors and food prep and uh, what you drink with what you eat.
Sure.
So let's start the discussion with that.
Sure. Yeah, my favorite holiday. I'm not afraid to say it. I really love, love, love Thanksgiving. Uh, Partly because there's no gift giving. It's just eating and drinking and enjoying company with family and friends. So it's been an adjustment for me doing Thanksgiving in Japan because it's not that easy to source turkey and some of the other ingredients are you kind of have to make your own. Like
Yeah,
breadcrumbs, for example, you can't really find easy to make stuffing. Stovetop doesn't really exist
so
here, so
much
you
of it
got
you
to
have to
make it
do
all from
from
scratch.
scratch. Yep.
Yep. But I and you and I did have Thanksgiving together a few years ago at Yamato Zakura, where I had a turkey delivered from the meat guy,
Yeah.
which is a savior for those of us who like Western cuts of meat. The meat guy sent a whole turkey to Ichiki, and we cooked it in Tekan's oven, and the family had never seen a turkey in
Hmm.
that format, other than in pictures or in movies, and we had a great time. So uh, that was a very nice Thanksgiving. But this year, uh, we're not unfortunately getting together. But I didn't go with a turkey this time, partly because my home convection oven will barely fit a turkey, and I decided to do a whole bird, whole chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Figure it's a domestic chicken here in Japan, and I'll dress it up like I would a turkey and just be a little bit smaller. Um,
Yeah.
and then I'll do stuffing, mashed potatoes, and some vegetable sides, and probably an apple pie. So kind of my typical Thanksgiving dinner, nice and nostalgic. But in, I guess I've been doing a lot of cooking, as you know. That was sort of my one of my big COVID uh, plans was to learn how to cook, and I feel like I've gotten there. And so what I've done is I've started to learn. I've learned, I think, the basic techniques, and now I'm starting to try to improve my recipes. And a big way
Mm-hmm.
of doing that is adding umami. And I think this is
Yeah.
something we don't always think about in the West, especially when you're cooking. You've got the same Thanksgiving recipes that you've been using for years. Those can be improved, and there are
Oh yeah.
two pretty simple ways of doing that. When you're talking about your stuffing or your gravy, um, I often start any of those kinds of things with a vegetable stock. And here in Japan, that's often a dashi. So
Yeah.
dashi, depending on where you are in the country and which dashi you want to make, it's most commonly made from kelp and dried bonito flakes.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's just kelp, sometimes it's flying fish, dried flying fish. There's different dashi recipes. But the key in all of that, when you're thinking about your Western Thanksgiving recipes and punching up the umami in your stuffing or whatever, is I think the kelp. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
easy to find dried kelp or kombu, as we would say here in Japan, uh, for making your vegetable stock. And I will make my vegetable stock from the scraps of vegetables that I've used. I keep a bag in the freezer. When I trim the ends off of things that I want that flavor, like carrots, for example, they add sweetness. I'll use potato scraps. I'll use cabbage scraps. I'll use just various things like that in my vegetable stock. But if you want to add that umami component to your vegetable stock, start with the water soaking uh, some kombu, some dried kombu in that water at a high, like you don't want it boiling. Don't boil as you're making that base. The kelp is going to release things you don't want at the boiling point. So just make it nice and hot where the water's steaming a little bit, but it's not reaching a boiling point. Leave it in there
Mm-hmm.
for about 10 minutes. Take that out. You've got your umami now in your water.
In
Now add
liquid
your
form.
vegetables. Yeah. Now add your vegetables to get all those other flavors. I usually add any mushroom scraps as well. It's another onions.
Yeah.
These are all nice components for a vegetable stock. Boil that for a while. If you got a pressure cooker, it happens much faster. But then you just squeeze out all the liquid from that slurry. Throw away the vegetables that have released all their flavors and nutrition. and then you've got your vegetable stock. And then it'll have more umami in it than it would otherwise because you've done that first process with the kombu. So that's something I think you can do in whatever way you use uh, vegetable stock, which I use it a lot for different making stews or making different things. So, and then the other thing I think is thinking about mushrooms. The other huge umami component is the shiitake mushroom, and it's
Hmm.
pretty easy to find dry or dehydrated shiitake mushrooms in the U.S. That's Japanese supermarkets. I'm sure Whole Foods carries some, that sort of thing. So if you can get some, I mean, fresh are amazing, but if you can get some dried shiitake, put those in, make that part of your stuffing recipe. Use those as one of your mushrooms because once you rehydrate them uh, and cook them long enough, they're going to get soft again, and then they can just chop them up and they become part of your stuffing. And that's a
Right.
ton of umami in those shiitake mushrooms. So those are a couple little recipe tweaks that I've been thinking about in how to elevate the flavors that you're going to come across in sort of your staple ingredients, um, your staple recipes, the things that most people seem to cook uh, in around Thanksgiving. And I mean that's basically what I have on that side of things on the recipe side. Um,
Yeah,
but anything
I
that's going to add umami or flavor is gonna make it even
right.
taste
And
even
the
better.
I think importantly for a lot of people, there's an opportunity to reduce the amount of salt that's used in everything. Um, when you're increasing umami, the need for
Hmm.
salt is reduced.
Hmm.
It's just you naturally are going to have so much more flavor in what you're producing. So when I look at recipes, I I look at old recipes I was given by my grandmother, my Italian grandmother, for casseroles the amount of butter and salt in a lot of these things is like, my God, how does anybody make it past 25 years old? Because your arteries must just be as hard as like lead piping.
Hmm.
And so I'm always thinking about this too in food prep. How do you dial up flavor? How do you draw flavors out of the ingredients that you're using without necessarily having to lean on salt? And I make no bones about it. There's way too much salt in a lot of Japanese food preparation. There's a
Hmm. Hmm.
surprising amount of salt in noodles like soba and udon noodles, for instance.
Hmm. Hmm.
Whereas in pasta, there's almost no salt used to make those noodles. It's remarkable tradition compared with tradition. The salt
Hmm.
comes in
Hmm.
elsewhere in Italian cooking, obviously.
Sure.
But umami, if you focus on that and focus on ingredients that have it, and then finding ways to draw it out, as you said, as through stocks and
Hmm.
using those in your food prep, man, there's so much more that you can do really with less. There's more with less, which is great too. So
Sure. Sure.
I think those are great points that you made, and I encourage other folks to just go online and look it up on YouTube, and you'll find all sorts of food prep tips
Hmm.
to do exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. 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 My little trick uh, is I've discovered an umami salt. It's a salt and pepper blend that has umami components in it. So it's got powdered mushroom, powdered scallops, and powdered kombu
Yeah,
in the salt mix, and so you can actually use less of it and get more. It just makes everything richer and more delicious with
it's
less salt
amazing.
content.
It's a
Yeah,
cheat
it
code
really is.
essentially for your
Exactly,
food.
exactly.
Highly encourage it.
Yeah.
There's yeah, it really takes even on almost on the first attempt, even without knowing what you're doing, it takes
Hmm.
everything you're doing up a notch.
Yep.
So yeah, look into that. And in Japan, we have access to a lot more of these things. There are umami enhancers. Of course, you've all heard of MSG, but there's also other food. Um, you know, there they're spices essentially. I guess you could call
Hmm.
them that are like really steroids for umami and
Hmm.
drawing it
Hmm.
out, and that a little goes an extremely long way. It's pretty remarkable. Ajinomoto has sort of
Yeah.
cornered the market on all of these different small vessel things that are behind your gas range. But
Hmm.
it's actually a lot easier to do than you would think. So this stuff is out there. So just go and find it.
Yeah, no
Um,
question. I guess I gave you
yeah,
the natural umami methods for cooking, sort of the slow food methods where, if you do not have the extra time, then yeah, a little bit of MSG actually goes a long way.
sure. Yeah. But I've started making fun of myself because I'll be like, I don't have time to make a pasta sauce from scratch. But it takes like 7 minutes to make a pasta sauce from scratch, and it takes 9 minutes to heat the pasta. So what am I
Right,
talking about? I have plenty of time. What, do I just go watch the pasta for 9 minutes? I could make a
right.
freaking. It's you probably do have time in a lot of cases.
Sure.
Yeah, there are easy one, and once you've done it twice, then it's like, oh, I don't even need to look at the recipe again. I mean, mostly it's just it's common sense for a lot of this
Sure, sure,
stuff.
sure. No
But
doubt.
I laugh at myself like, oh, I don't have time. I gotta watch the pasta boil. I gotta make sure I don't. Like, well, cut some freaking vegetables. Let's make a proper pasta sauce rather than something out of a freaking plastic bag. Ugh. Anyway, sorry. So yeah, this is all great, and I'm even more excited about the dinner that we're having on Thursday. Um, I am I'm on it. We're a few friends are getting together. I'm on potatoes duty, and of course that
Right.
means I'll be making potatoes a couple of different ways, and I'll be bringing sweet potato shochu because I think if you want, and since we were talking about low sodium, how about low calorie? The lowest calorie way to consume sweet potatoes is through probably sweet potato shochu. I don't think that's even probably, that's absolutely through sweet potato shochu. So if you imbibe your sweet potatoes, you're getting far fewer calories than
Sure,
your
sure.
mashed potatoes, your potato
Yeah,
casserole, your whatever your family's tradition is.
yeah.
And so I think that comes into, I think it should come into more conversations and appear on more dinner tables because there's so many different ways to enjoy sweet potato shochu that is going to complement the flavors of a typical, and I apologize, I don't even know what would be considered a typical Thanksgiving spread because it's so different from family to
Right,
family.
right.
But sweet potato shochu, potatoes are just part of the conversation anyway. So
Hmm. Hmm.
hot serves, cold serves, what have you. I don't know. What are you thinking in that vein? How does sweet potato complement some of the things that you were just talking about?
Well, I actually, my family's tradition was not to cook with sweet potatoes for Thanksgiving. I know a lot of people, especially down south, will do candied yams and things like that. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure.
for us, it was always just standard, potatoes, mashed potatoes, and gravy, that sort of thing. Um, but sweet potato shochu, certainly. I mean, the brand that always comes to mind for me is Jikuya White, which from Honkaku Spirits, which is made from annoimo, which is a sweet potato that's available for consumption in Japanese or in American supermarkets, and that has, like, when I make a Negroni with that, for example, if you want a little aperitif before dinner, make yourself a Jikuya White Negroni, replacing the gin with that, and it smells like Thanksgiving. It's
Yeah,
it's got all of that candied
I
yam
believe that.
almost aroma in the Negroni with some nice, bitter and spice and whatnot. So I really, really like that as an option for
God, it's
a,
so
a
fruity. It's amazing while
pretty.
still being nice and earthy and spicy.
Mhm. I mean, my favorite sweet potato shochu for a Negroni is colorful,
Oh,
but that has so much bright fruit. It much more expresses almost like a fruity gin, where Jikuya White does give you that sweet potato character and does remind me a lot of Thanksgiving, a lot of aroma memories from Jikuya White.
yeah.
So those are a couple of excellent options.
And
If we're just doing a bit, if we're just making it a Honkaku Spirits sweet potato shochu advertisement, then I would talk about goro,
yeah,
uh,
you tend to. I was
which
waiting for
is,
you to get there.
yeah, goro. This is what I would probably want to drink with my Thanksgiving dinner if I'm drinking sweet potato, because it's so food friendly.
Yeah.
I did a little dinner with a couple of media folks in LA earlier this year, and we had a bunch of different products, different shochu and awamori on the table, and then I just ordered a bunch of appetizers, a few different, it was a sushi restaurant, so a little bit of sushi, a little bit of sashimi or carpaccio. Great spread of food. And with virtually everything that I ordered, Goro was the best fit. So we were trying to find food pairings. It was kind of an experiment for us to say, okay, which of these shochu or awamori goes with which dish? Goro went with everything.
Yeah.
It was wild. It's just so food friendly. So highly recommend that. That especially if it's cold and you want to be warm, have that in a hot water serve while you ready. Um,
Oyuwari for the win.
that's gonna go
All day,
so
every
well
day.
with Thanksgiving dinner.
Yep.
The other, I guess, if you're thinking about shochu traditional serves and Thanksgiving dinner, because I just think of Thanksgiving dinner as being warming, comforting. It's a lot of rich, I guess I would almost describe as fatty flavors, right?
Yeah.
You've got the rendered fat in your gravy. You've got, there's definitely going to be butter in your mashed potatoes and your stuffing. You've got the fat of the turkey. It's just lots and lots of delicious fats, and those are all very warming, I think. And so where I gravitate toward is actually atmospheric rice shochu.
Mm.
That that lends itself so well um, to those kinds of flavors. And yeah, mushigaishi is I think one of our absolute favorites. Um, but the other, and then in a pinch, you could be using an awamori, but I actually think I like the white koji expression from rice shochu in a hot serve, in a cold serve, as a really nice complement to Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Uh, that's my own take on it. I don't know. How about you, Christopher? You have a different direction you would go?
Yeah, I obviously, you know me, Oyuwari is going to be the game of the day on game day. And I also have uh, of course been thinking a lot about cocktails. Toddies in general are going to be a lot of fun. Some people drink mulled wine around the holidays. That could be something very interesting to play with, especially sweet potato shochu. You mentioned awamori as well, because of those rich aromas and flavors that themselves are very umami oriented. I often think of the mushroom notes in awamori and how those can complement some of these umami notes we're trying to tease out of our traditional Thanksgiving dishes.
Hmm.
And I also thought about, some of the there's a lot of great cocktails that have been produced by, bars that probably a lot of folks who watch this will have heard of. A lot of them coming out of New York and Chicago, and some of them very recent. I mean, some of the new classics are really from the last 20 years.
Hmm.
And things like the penicillin and paper plane and things of that, the gold rush and all of these things. And a lot of these, the great thing about a lot of these drinks is that they're, in some cases, they're one-to-one drinks, meaning equal portions for your most of your ingredients, or they're very
Hmm.
close to that, and they're not very complex cocktails. There's often like 4 ingredients or so, maybe 5, including simple syrup. And so I just was thinking of what's a simple one that people could do, and what's another flavor that's so typical for Thanksgiving. I mean, I think we'd all agree that apples are a big part of it.
Sure.
Apple, pumpkin, squash, all of these things, sweet potatoes, tubers. And so I just threw together a recipe that maybe might be fun. I think we could probably, I don't know if you're gonna like this name, but we're, uh, I'll put an image up there so that people can
This
hopefully
is all new
have
to
it.
me. I did not know this was happening. So
Do I have a? Hold on. I thought I had it here somewhere. I threw together something that I just called a Naha cider, and it's using a really rich awamori. I chose yoka koji because it's got enough octane to sort of carry it. And I can't figure out how to. Oh, because it's not a Chrome tab, I can't show it. Come on, StreamYard, are you kidding me? Oh, you know what I can do though? Is it gonna let me do that? Well, this is dumb. Maybe I can just like drop it into the chat instead so that you can see what it looks like. Anyways, to give you an idea of what a Naha cider is, it's basically awamori, an ounce and a half of awamori. It's an ounce and a half of your apple cider, and then just probably a teaspoon, a little bit more of lime juice, and then I would give it a full tablespoon, and then a teaspoon of simple syrup, and you really just shake those things together in a tin with ice and pour into whatever vessel of your choice. You could garnish it with a cinnamon stick, add a anise star clove in there, maybe put a wheel of apple in it,
Sure.
and it'll be pretty. It'll have a nice balance of the acidity from the lime juice and the apple, and the depth and umami from the awamori, and then the sweetness from the
Hmm.
simple syrup. I think it could be a nice, we'll call it the Naha cider, but there's all sorts of riffs on some of these new classics that you can do. I
Hmm.
guess
Hmm.
I could be accused for creating a little bit of a Thanksgiving margarita here too. Without the tequila, I've basically taken the tequila out of that equation and added awamori instead. But
I've never had
it,
an apple margarita.
an
Do they
apple, a
exist?
cider margarita, a cider marg. Um, but there's all of these types of things these newer classics that I think are
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
easy to mess with.
Sure.
And some of the great bars. What's the one that the penicillin came from? Milk and Honey, which
Hmm. Hmm.
unfortunately is no longer with us. I think they closed shop in 2020. But that place birthed some amazing bartenders and some really, really prominent new drinks that
Sure. No question.
most people these days who like cocktails have heard of a penicillin. That's not an old drink,
Right.
so it's pretty cool when you
Yeah,
think about
for
it.
sure.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
when you mentioned mulled wine, it made me think of my favorite winter warmer, which is the hot buttered rum.
yeah, yeah.
And of course, it's got butter in it, which makes it artery clogging, but it's still just an absolutely delicious
Yeah.
drink. And I think I gain about a pound every time I have one, so I try not to have them too often. But you
It's a
could
full
certainly use a
cheeseburger.
nice full. If you want a lower ABV version of that, you can use a nice Kokuto sugar shochu rather than a foolproof rum to bring down the ABV and let you last a little longer before you fall asleep in your tryptophan coma
Yep,
after dinner.
love
So
it. um,
yeah, good
Well,
stuff.
that was I hope pretty helpful for people in terms of, I know there's a lot of folks out there who may be hosting Thanksgiving for only the first or second time, and it is overwhelming. I mean, you've done it several
Hmm.
times. We used to host a gigantic feast in our tiny apartment with like 16 people, and trying to cook and prepare food all day long for that many folks and have it all come out at the right time, and it's a feat. So good luck with everything. But hopefully we've given you a couple of tips of how you can do more with less.
There you go.
What's Garrett saying? Brown butter,
He's
fat wash, kana. Ooh, jeez, oh
he
man.
he always picks the easiest cocktail recipes for home bartenders, doesn't
Yeah, always the
he?
easiest. I'm talking about 4 ingredient cocktails here, and he's like, oh, here's something that'll take you a couple days.
You don't have any other pre-Thanksgiving prep to do. Just make a brown butter wash.
Wow, that's what sounds delectable
No, it does.
and
It sounds
artery
fantastic.
clogging. But hey, we can't be 25 years old forever, right? And
No.
he protests. He's like, that's only 2 ingredients. What are you guys talking about? Yeah, fair enough. Just takes
Yeah,
some extra YouTube watching.
I hear
Okay,
you.
last but not least, I think let's move on to newly open. I've got a newly open. Do you have a bottle
Yep.
killer or a newly
I have a
opened?
bottle. I have a bottle kill. I've been trying to clear out my stacks behind me a little bit
I've
and make a
I've
little bit more
slowed
space in
down in
my
my
office.
clear out endeavors, quite frankly. I'll start first because I've got a newly
Yeah.
open, and then you
Go
can you
ahead.
can finish this out. This is something called Tokujo Mugi Shochu from Hikari Shuzo in Fukuoka, and it's made with it's got this super yeasty thing that'll blast you when you first open the bottle, but when it settles, it gets so fragrant in very fruity ways, and a little, kind of like a cotton candy vanilla type of thing. It's pretty crazy.
Hmm.
25% ABV. I've just been sipping it straight, quite frankly, because I'm kind of really fascinated by the aroma profile, but that's my newly open. Let me switch it over to bottle kill for you.
Sure. Yeah, no, I like yeasty barley shochus. Those are often a lot of fun. I talked about taste memory or aroma memory earlier, and a case of that is with tempai here from
Uh,
Fukuoka as well. They smell like, to me, it smells like dinner rolls from my childhood.
oh wow,
So
yeah,
yeah, that's really, really nice aroma memory.
absolutely.
For me, my bottle kill is actually Tezukuri. This is from
Wow,
Furusawa. Um, the reason I still have this in because I'm doing a bottle clean out, so this should be in the recycle bin, but I can't get over this
get
glass.
rid of that bottle.
I
Yeah,
absolutely love this glass with these faceted shoulders. It's just like of an era. It just feels like Showa to me. And of course, Furusawa does everything super traditional. This is a 20% alcohol sweet potato shochu from Furusawa, which I is kind of a east coast of Kyushu special. They do that in Miyazaki and Oita.
yeah.
And I finished this a couple of days ago, and I was like, I'm gonna hang on to this green glass because I just love it. So
Almost nobody uses that glass anymore. So,
yeah,
and especially green.
yeah,
That's a
green
that's a that's a
for sure.
fossil.
You really only see this glass in Miyazaki. I don't think I've ever seen another prefecture's
I
maker
think you're right.
source this glass. So it's really, really cool.
It
Cool
feels
bottle.
like it should be on the back bar of a snack where people are singing karaoke to the entire room very, very poorly in
Yeah,
a in an incredibly lubricated manner.
in Miyazaki, I'm sure that this is a standard bottle in snacks and izakayas. But yeah, this is just really nice, light, easy drinking. Obviously, 20%. One of my favorite Furusawa products, honestly, and quite affordable if you can track it down here in Japan.
Tezukuri. Yeah, you're gonna have to go down south to find it.
That's right.
Nice. All right. Well, that
Cool.
brings us through to I think the end of the show. We're a little bit over. We went a little long on this because we did have a lot more to say than I think either of us anticipated, which really shouldn't surprise us that much. But it was a good one.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah.
Let us know what you drink on Thanksgiving. Tweet at us, X at us. Don't Facebook at us. Instagram at us.
Instagram will definitely work if you're gonna do something
Probably
related
the
to
best.
shochu.
Yeah.
At a very minimum, please tag Japan Distilled. But
Hmm.
it's also if you want quick action on the reamplification of your stuff and it's shochu or awamori related, it's good to tag us both directly.
Yeah,
And
especially Christopher. He's very good at the
I
stories. I'm less of a story guy, but I
I
do use
like
it
to let
occasionally.
people know where the action is happening. So if it happens to be happening in your neck of the woods, let's tell people about that. So
Absolutely.
anyways, thank you
Yeah.
everybody for joining us both live and on archive whenever you get around to viewing episode 155 of Shochu'sday. It's been a good one. I think, unfortunately, next week I'm going to be
Completely
on the
forgot.
road again. What's
Completely
up?
forgot. We had a
Yo,
podcast episode release
did we?
interview with Paul Clark from Imbibe Magazine. He was
Oh
recently
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
Kyushu.
yeah.
We did a little bit of a discussion of the distilleries. He visited with us and talked about what he sees the future shochu is for the U.S. Really, really thoughtful guy. He's written a cocktail book. He's the editor in chief of Imbibe Magazine. So good times. Have a listen.
Excellent.
All right.
All right. Thank you for
Cheers.
reminding me of that as well. And on that note, everybody, until next time, from both of us here in Japan to all of you out there all around the world, a very hearty and heartfelt kanpai.
Kanpai.